Can everyone see the screen, or am I stood in the way? Good. Hello, I'm Matt Walton. I am Head of Product for FutureLearn. I'll come on to tell you a little bit more about FutureLearn, what it is. Head of Product means that I sit across tech and design. I interface with the business. I'm broadly responsible for the product vision and ultimately shipping it. So it's sort of a job with interesting tensions. And I guess being a web professional myself and having spent the last 12 months or so trying to build a team of people to create a digital product, finding people with web skills is a subject that's quite close to my heart because it's very, very hard to find really good developers. So without further ado, I'll tell you what I'm going to talk about. So the talk is going to be broadly in 3 acts. I'm going to start by giving you a brief history of FutureLearn because I think a bit of context as to kind of how we got to where we got to is quite useful. And also kind of, I guess, says why we are in a position where we can talk a little bit about web entrepreneurism with a bit of kind of gravitas, I guess. I'm going to talk a little bit about our mission and how we go about things and why that might bring a particular flavour to how I think MOOCs can help this space. And then I'm going to start to address the question, which is how can MOOCs provide web skills. I'm going to finish with a little bit of a vision as well, which hopefully you guys may be able to help us with. So, a brief history. So I'm going to start by sort of saying where we've got to right now. So we've got 1.5 million course enrolments, and that's from nearly 3/4 of a million users. We celebrated our birthday a couple of weeks ago, so that's 12 months basically. We've also now got to the point where we have 135 courses available in our course portfolio, and that does include things like web science, digital marketing, there's a course on branding, there's one on designing mobile games. In fact, Thurindu, I think, might be speaking about it a bit later on. There is one on creative programming, there's one on cybersecurity, so there's quite a few already that we offer that are things that could help with web skills. We also have 40 partners now. So we have 37 universities. Broadly, that's 26 of the top 30 universities in the UK. We also have representatives from quite a range of international universities from Australia, China, Korea, Africa, Scandinavia, and across Europe. We've also got quite a few interesting cultural institutions that are beginning to join the mix as well. So we have the British Museum and the British Library, and they are bringing resources and some of the wealth of their amazing archives to help enrich some of the courses. So I guess to rewind, the starting point was this notion of massive open online courses. So I think 2012 was dubbed the year of the MOOC. And this is quite an interesting quote from Peter Norvig, who ran one of the original MOOCs. And he said, if you can do it at any time, it means you can do it tomorrow. And if you can do it tomorrow, well, you may not get around to it. And so he thought that the innovation in terms of MOOCs was bringing about the due date. I think that also part of that he doesn't touch on here, but is something that we find is very important in terms of what we've done with FutureLearn, is that it also creates the environment for a really interesting social experiment. And it means that you can create an event where lots of people can join together. So obviously the US was very much at the forefront of this. So there was these 3 who were particularly big names in this space. And so the question came amongst the kind of UK academic community, what do we do about this? So this is 1967. This is the Open University, who was set up as what was known as the University of the Air. So it was a kind of bold new experiment to use the new medium of TV and radio in terms of opening up access to education. Here's another brilliant photo. I was only going to put one in, but I couldn't resist putting 2 because that's so awesome. So the Open University had been doing distance learning for more than 40 years, and so was kind of looking with interest across the pond at what was going on in the States. And they were headed up at the time by this guy, who is a guy called Martin Bean. If you ever get the chance to hear Martin Bean speak, he's brilliant. He's a really, really charismatic speaker. And what's interesting about him is that he's not your classic Vice-Chancellor material. His background is Microsoft. And so he was looking at what was going on in the States and kind of thought, well, how can he, with all conscience, as the Vice-Chancellor of the Open University, sit by and watch one of the sort of biggest things to happen in distance learning and not be part of that? And so he very shrewdly managed to get, I think, 12 universities together and within a week or so get them all to sign up to creating a UK response to that. That would be led by the Open University, and those partners joined because of the Open University's expertise in it. The other interesting thing that he did was to hire this guy. So this guy is my boss. This is Simon Nelson. He's our CEO. And the interesting thing about him is that he doesn't have an education background either. His background is the BBC. And so basically the idea was to try and bring that kind of expertise of creating something that is a consumer product that is about bringing or how the web is disrupting a traditional industry, in the case of Simon's background, TV and radio, and how does that translate into a new environment. He then brought me on board, and so I remember, I think, so this is going back not quite 2 years, having a conversation with Simon which said, well, if you want to do something that's new, disruptive, you want to move fast, you want to be innovative, you probably don't want to do it from within the Open University's IT department. So the original idea was, can we use some existing expertise and technology there? You probably want to set it up like a tech startup. And what you want is you want a room with whiteboards and squeaky pens and laptops and a small number of people who are passionately going for it. And so he agreed, and this is the room that we got. Unfortunately, I didn't specify that we needed natural light, so we ended up in this basement in one of the OU sort of auxiliary buildings in London. But we have got our whiteboards, and we did have our squeaky pens, and we did have our laptops, and we had a bunch of amazing people who were absolutely going for it. So this is April 2013. This is the first of what we call sprint review. So we have, every 2 weeks, we have a meeting where everyone in the company gathers together and we set ourselves goals for the next 2 weeks and we review the things that we've done over the previous 2 weeks. So it's a way of demoing things that we've made, showing bits of design, talking about how we've grown in terms of acquiring users, reflecting on some of the courses that have run, what worked well and so on. So this was the very, very first one. Just to give you a sense of kind of what that development timeline has been like. So in January, that was where I talked about with that first meeting that I had with Simon, and then we developed off the back of that our vision for the product. And so that was like, what do we want it to do? And that's where social learning became a very strong part of that. We put together a delivery plan, so how might one put together a team to do this sort of thing. We built a prototype in 3 weeks, which we then showed our partners. By that point, it had grown to about a partnership of 20 odd. And that was the very first time that I think they kind of started to see what it could be. And I think it was also the point where we really sort of built kind of trust that we could deliver something. We wrote the first line of code and then committed it on, I think it was the 9th of April last year. We then ran 2 alpha courses. The first was with 150 friends and family. So the idea was to get something out there as quickly as possible, to start to learn by getting real people to use it, and then develop from that. And the idea was that we would deliver something by the September. So we had literally 6 months to deliver something, and the idea was to get to market as quickly as possible with the smallest possible thing, in order to then develop it in the open using the insights from educators and learners about how we develop our product. So we then ran a second beta, which was with 1,500 of the OU alumni, and then in September we launched the product and ran our first course on the 14th of October. We ran 1 course per week for 8 weeks in that first period, and we capped them to 10,000 users because we weren't quite sure how it was going to work, and we wanted to kind of manage how we developed and how we scaled the platform. Those courses all broadly finished by the end of that year. which then takes us to the beginning of this year. So the aim was to start this year by running uncapped courses, which we did, and so we now are running 3 or 4 courses every week, and as many people as sign up to them can take part in them. The next thing that we did was to start to put the foundations in of a business model. So we started to sell statements of participation towards the end of March. So on our courses, if you fully participate, so that's to do the majority of the steps on the course and take part in all of the assessment, you're eligible to buy one of our statements of participation. We passed our 1 million course sign-ups at the end of July. We ran a course which had got 120,000 registered users on it in September, which I'll talk about a little bit in a moment. We won the British Interactive Media Awards Startup of the Year last month, and then we celebrated our birthday a few weeks ago where we removed the beta tag. And so that was basically us saying that we think our product is getting to the point where it is maturing, and that removing the beta was a kind of good sign of our progress. Which kind of takes us to now. So hopefully this gives you a good sort of sense of like that web entrepreneurism spirit, and hopefully will kind of show my perspective on things as I talk about some of the things next. This is where we're at now. So we're now in an office with Natural Light, you'll be pleased to know, and we're in the British Library. So they're one of our partners, and they had some office space going. So we said yes, that would be awesome. So this is the sprint review that happened a couple of weeks ago. So we're now at sprint 41, and so we continue to deploy. Generally about 3 times a day we put new code on the platform, so the platform's iterating all the time. So, our mission and vision. So this is our mission statement: to pioneer the best learning experiences for everyone anywhere. So I'm just going to take a few moments to just explain what we mean by that. So the first word is pioneering. Now we prefer the word pioneering to innovating. What we're doing is very definitely innovative, and I guess it's the context of the space that we're working in that makes it very innovative. But what we're doing is bringing tried and tested techniques that are used on the web all of the time to create a product that people know how to use and love. So we're using lots of kind of common practices on the web, lots of familiar kind of technology if you work in this space, but applying it to the new domain of education. We're also bringing a lot of expertise and well-researched things that work in classrooms and applying it to the new world of massive and social networks, which is effectively what we're creating. And we think that the word pioneering also suggests this sense of collective endeavour, which is very much part of what we do. Partnership is very much something that we're founded in, and so I guess it's going forward to reach a goal with other people who are interested in reaching the same goal. That's very much part of what we do. What do we mean by the best learning experiences? So the vision for our product is that we should inspire the best learning experiences by telling stories, provoking conversation, and celebrating progress. So the word storytelling is quite an interesting one, and we like it because it sort of provokes all sorts of thoughts. It's a very human one. We are a storytelling creature at heart. And it's about this notion of an event. So the really interesting thing about MOOCs is this sort of sense of time. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so therefore, as a learner joining the course, you should have some sort of big questions that you want to know the answers to. And the way the weeks are structured should get you to kind of think what's going to happen next and keep you kind of moving on. So this nature of storytelling we think is really, really important in terms of maintaining people's momentum throughout the course. The notion of the storyteller or the lead educator is also really important because it's about how the learners develop that kind of relationship with the person who's leading the course. And so we try to sort of reinforce that wherever possible, be it through an email, be it through the feedback that you receive on quizzes, where you see the educator's face, and so on. And it's very much inherent in how we've designed our product as well. So unlike a lot of MOOC platforms, we have this kind of central notion of the to-do list, which shows the kind of narrative that you're meant to work through things. You can jump around it if you want, but the course is very much meant to be consumed in that order, and that you, as a learner, should always know what the next kind of default thing is to do. Provoking conversation is about the fact what we're based on is effectively principles of learning through conversation. We are a social learning platform, and in the world where an educator can't possibly talk to all of the people, the idea is about how do you create a community that learns from each other, where the community kind of comes to know more than it did beforehand through that kind of nature of conversation. And I think it's that bringing of insights and experience from lots of different backgrounds and expertise and so on that is particularly rich, and I think we've only just begun to scratch the surface of what a powerful thing that can be from a learning point of view. So this social architecture underpins everything that we do, and I'll show a little bit more about that in a moment. And then celebrating progress. So this is really important as well. We like to celebrate any form of engagement where somebody comes away from a course having learned something. And it's about drawing upon some of the theories of people like John Hattie and so on in terms of visible learning, and how do you motivate people, get them to reflect on what they've learned and so on, which is very, very beneficial from an educational perspective. And this is built into our platform from the notion of like just a single step on the course which you can mark as done and you tick something off the to-do list, to bigger forms of celebration around what other forms of recognition and statements that you might receive at the end of it. So the last one is everyone anywhere. So this is building on essentially what began with our founder at the Open University, but is about making education as accessible as possible. And we mean accessible in the broadest possible sense of the word, in that we want it to be interesting and fun and usable and delightful, and things that will get people hooked about and start to learn, as well as meaning things like the fact that we are AA accessible compliant when it comes to the sort of technical use of the word accessibility. And in terms of anywhere, it's about how we design the platform to work across all devices and so on. So we design in what we call a mobile first way. So we take a responsive approach so that our website changes depending on the screen size, and so it will work on any device or any kind of input method. So basically, ultimately, we want education to be convenient, because education has often been something that's too costly to do. You might have to go somewhere, you might have to move to a different place and give up your previous life in order to go and do it. So what we're trying to do is make it something that is something that feels like that can be for you if you hadn't previously thought that it was before, but that you can also fit it into your life in some way around other things. You can even learn on the bus. We also put our learners first. We take a very learner-centric view of everything that we do, because ultimately we think we have a better product if we put the learner front and centre of it. And we've just made a little video which celebrates our learners, so I thought I'd show that to you.
Sorry, I beg your pardon.
Born and bred in Clacton City, Essex.
Born in Kirkuk, Iraq.
Macclesfield in Cheshire.
From what area?
I find it a brilliant way to switch off from work. If I've been in meetings all day and rushing all over the place.
You can learn in 16 and 17, 17 maybe.
Finance already for 2 at that moment, and now I'm doing at least 7.
The maths and science one, which was amazing. To be able to access something like that is free is just amazing. I've done kitchen chemistry, introduction to basic science, body's flat, your biometrics,